Hey everybody. What we're going to do right now is talk just a little bit about directional indicators. Directional indicators are often referred to as transitional phrases or transition words. And the reason that this part of speech and this part of language is called directional indicators is it shows the actual direction in thought that's happening throughout, in our case, a paper or an argument. So directional indicators show the direction of the thinking. Okay? So we tend to find directional indicators in topic sentences and the last sentences of paragraphs. Why? Well, if you think about how paragraphs are connected, what the topic sentences and the last sentences of paragraphs can do is they kind of help form chains. And what a strong topic sentence is going to do is almost reach back a little bit to the information that came before in order to pull that through into the next idea or ideas that are being discussed. So let's talk through how this happens. There's 4 different kinds of directional indicators. There's actually a lot of different kinds, but 4 basic categories, so that's what we'll go over. First, additive. These are ones that are words like and, in addition, also. So what they're doing is they're showing that we are adding more information, right? Hence additive. The other kind, causal, not casual, causal. These show cause and effect within thinking. Ordinal. These show order. So numbering things, first point, second point, first idea, last idea, phrases like that. And then we have this, which are I can never say this right, adversative. I call them oppositional directional indicators. And these are ones that show a departure or direct change in movement of thinking from one idea to another. So if we think about what each of these parts of language do, we can figure out how we can kind of hack them to get what we want out of a paper. So if you go through and check what your directional indicators are doing, you can notice a lot about the structure that you've made for yourself in the paper. If your paper is relying on a lot of additive transitions in your topic sentences or in the last sentences of your paragraphs, then your paper might feel kind of listy. Listy is not what we want. If you get a paper that feels like a list, then that's kind of like, here's a piece of information, here's another piece of information, here's another piece of information, and you could almost rearrange things and it wouldn't matter, right? So papers are not just about providing lists of information. And that's something that we want to be careful too with the ordinal directional indicators. These both can end up making listy papers if we don't use them properly. So where would we want to use something like ordinal directional indicators? Great place to use them is thinking about the thesis paragraph. So in this paper, first I will blah, blah, blah. Next I will blah, blah, blah. And then finally I blah, blah, blah. So if you're doing things within paragraphs to talk about the order of how you're going to approach ideas, ordinal directional indicators can help you very much. Now the other 2, causal and then adversative. These are going to be the winner, winner, chicken dinner directional indicators for not just this paper, but all the papers you will write ever. Causal is showing cause and effect between relationship and ideas. or showing cause and effect between ideas and how that relationship happens. So this allows us to transition from comparing ideas of other authors or other thinkers and then bringing it into where our opinions start to generate. Likewise, with the adversative or oppositional directional indicators, you can make departures. So, yeah, well, the literature says this, however, we have cause to think something else, perhaps, right? So with these, we're showing cause and effect, and with these, we're showing opposition or change from one idea to another. Now, I know many of us come from a writing experience of, with your last paragraph, you restate your thesis statement. We don't want that. You don't need to do that. There's where we want to get into why does this idea matter? So if we look at all of the cause and effect in the information you've given us, and if we look at that in terms of what ideas are changing, what ideas are staying stagnant in the paper, what new information are you perhaps letting us in on, that's where we're going to start to get some really interesting work. So with this individual revision exercise, what I want you to do is I want you to go through and actually physically highlight all of the directional indicators that you have in your paper. All of them. And do some data work on what you find. How many directional indicators does your paper have? What of the categories do they fall into? Do you notice a relationship between where the writing starts to get a little tougher, or maybe if things get kind of murky, do we fall into certain patterns with directional indicators, or do directional indicators help us get out of those patterns or those pits? I don't know. You're going to find out when you do this on your papers. So go ahead, physically highlight them, and do some reflective work based on the statistics that you find in your own writing patterns. This is one of the most important lessons I personally ever learned in writing, and to show you, I have kept a list of each of the kinds of things, and I put them in my writing notebook. I'll give you a link to where you can get resources for trying to figure out what is what kind of directional indicator. But I like to have this list on hand because if I get stuck of, I don't know how to move from this idea to that idea, I look and I see, what am I trying to do? Am I trying to show emphasis? Am I trying to show contrast? Am I trying to show conflict? What am I doing with my ideas? And this little chart, it says, like, if you're trying to show conflict, you would use these kinds of words. If you're trying to show departure from your ideas, you would use these kinds of words. And that can be something that is just kind of a useful jumping off point if I feel like I'm stuck or dealing with writer's block or not knowing how to move forward with particular ideas. So that's the short little lesson on how to do directional indicators. I know there's a lot in this video. I'd recommend watching it another time, maybe 3 times, as many times as you need, and go ahead and get started with this revision module. I'm excited to see what you find.